Okay, now that you've filled out your exclusive right to lease agreement and the tenant-led law notification, you are ready to list the property and receive rental applications. So the rest of these forms are pertaining to your actual listing and what to do once you have received a rental application, how to convert that into an apartment lease, and then what are the steps the landlord needs to accomplish after that lease is in place to ensure they're compliant with the law. So the first form you'll see here is a standard rental application. Typically, a tenant will come with a rental application in hand, or their agent will provide them with one. But if they don't, you can provide this rental application to them. If you use one form, in this case, it's the Greater Boston Real Estate Board form. It makes it a little bit easier to review because the information is standard from tenant to tenant. So you're going to provide them with this information. Again, a lot of it has sensitive information on it. So if you're collecting social security numbers or bank account numbers, you need to be very careful with how you protect this document. That will also give you the necessary information to conduct a background check if necessary and asked for by the landlord. So once you have found a prospective tenant that the landlord wants to sign a lease with, you're going to move forward with a standard apartment lease. Again, there are many different versions of this. We prefer the Greater Boston Real Estate Board version. So we'll just take a look at it quickly. We're not going to go through in detail how to actually fill it out. But again, you're gonna include all of the information that you have on hand to autofill this form. And then you're going to go through and you're going to help the landlord fill out all the sections necessary to specify the terms and conditions of the lease. So this standard apartment lease form, I think is 3 pages long, 4 pages long, and requires signatures from both the landlord or owner and the tenants at the bottom. There also is Section 34, which is for other provisions. Many owners want to include an addendum, which needs to be signed, which lay out additional provisions not included in the standard apartment lease. And that's okay. You're just going to need to ensure you coordinate with the landlord and tenant to get everybody's signature on that addendum. So make yourselves familiar with this form, read through it. We can also provide copies of what a completed apartment lease can look like to help you fill it out. So if we go back, once that apartment lease is signed and both parties have a copy, the landlord is still going to be responsible for some additional steps. And it's your duty as the agent representing them to advise them of the current laws and practices and what they need to do to make sure they're compliant. So some of the additional forms you'll see at the bottom here need to be completed by the landlord and distributed to the tenant. The first being the notice of bank holding security deposit. So if the owner is going to hold a security deposit, which is very typical in the Boston area, they need to provide a copy of the bank account information to the tenant. So this needs to be a escrow account that the owner needs to keep to hold this information. Typically, we will not hold that in escrow. That would be the owner's responsibility, but this form helps them complete the documentation necessary to be compliant with the law. There's also a really good form that provides a receipt from the landlord or owner to the tenant for the first month's rent, last month's rent, if applicable, and or the security deposit. That way both parties have a written record of what was submitted when that lease was signed, what types of rent were collected, and what types of security deposits were collected. In addition to that, it's a really good practice to have the owner fill out a statement of rental property condition. And what this will do is it will specify any defects or issues that the owner sees with the property before that tenant actually moves in. That way, when the tenant is moving out, there is a record of any of the defects. Say there were holes in the wall, or the toilet was broken, or there was something wrong. That way, the tenant does not get knocked on their security deposit. They don't get a withdrawal because of that defect. It's already on record showing that there were issues. Again, this is really good to help protect both the landlord and the tenant. So we recommend that you provide this form to your landlord. to fill out and have both parties sign. Again, the checklist at the bottom is really helpful to ensure that you're not skipping any steps. And then if there are any other questions, you can always contact Chris.